All right. Good morning, everyone. Thank you all for joining. My name is Joseph Katz from KettleSpace. I would like to welcome you all to today's event, How to Hire Rockstar Interns to Speed Up Your Startup. We are recording. If you have any questions or comments that you want to throw out to Will, please put them in the chat and we'll make sure that we get to them during today's event. While we're getting started here, feel free to just drop in the chat, who you are, where you're zooming in from, anything interesting you're hoping to learn today. Please keep yourself on mute when you're not speaking for a question and answer period. And again, use the chat as much as possible for communicating with the presenters. So for those not familiar with KettleSpace is a real estate technology company. We're based in New York City. We have a network of inspiring workspaces and a passion for community development. Since the pandemic, we've partnered with organizations to help them bring people back to the office with a variety of flexible workspace options. Our goal has always been to support, empower, and connect our community, and that's why we're committed to producing regular events like this one. So I'm excited today to introduce one of the members of our community and the host of today's event, William Balance. He is the co-founder and CEO of Lavender, an AI assistant for writing better sales emails faster. His background includes being an early hire at multiple early stage startups and a focus on e-commerce and marketing. Will, thanks for joining us today. Feel free to elaborate on my intro, and the floor is yours.
Yeah, thanks. And good morning, everyone. I'm Will Balance, like he said, co-founder and CEO of Lavender. And today we're going to talk about the process we use to really shortcut the path to market by partnering with top tier interns. We've got a pretty intimate group today, so feel free to ask questions in the chat. My co-founder, Will Allred's in the white shirt. So if you've got more questions specific to your situation, just because we have such a small group, we can address those more one-on-one. For the framework for the presentation, I kept it pretty short just to go through who we are, how we found, interviewed, onboarded, and managed really great interns. And then I thought the end of it could be left open for some Q&A, more personalized questions, etc. So who are we and why does this matter? Lavender is a browser extension that helps you get more replies. Typically it's used by salespeople, but it's good for all sorts of use cases. And part of the things that we used interns for was to figure out what vertical of the market our product and our technology would be best fit for. So Lavender has everything you need, from email verification to an AI writing assistant to social data on the people you're emailing. It's really optimized for getting a reply. And for the KettleSpace community, you can just use code KettleSpace to get at Lavender for free. So the most important thing to keep in mind when thinking through interns is that it has to be mutually beneficial. What we did, we hired over 20 interns last summer, and they went on to start their own startups. They went into master's or PhD programs, went to work at Apple, Google, Royal Bank of Canada. And they constantly wrote back to us and said, this was one of the most valuable things that I've ever done. And the key there was we didn't have interns to go get us coffee or do menial tasks. They were contributing heavily to our core product. And that's part of the process that we had, was to get them to think of the business like they were part of the founding team. Because in our situation, they were. We were building a different product, a marketing product that was applying psychology and neuroscience to marketing. We got impacted by COVID, and we thought, how can we repurpose some of our technology for this new world of remote first, future to work? And Lavender was a product that would help you write better one-to-one emails. We had a random idea of, let's just bring on a intern to assist the three co-founders, myself, Will, and our CTO, Casey. And that one intern idea spawned into us having over 20 interns. Originally, we thought we'd hire a generalist intern just to help with some marketing or things like that. And then we thought, well, let's just post an internship for everything that we need and see what happens. And we'll go through some of that. For some of the roles, especially things that were more AI engineering focused, we had tons of applicants. Some other things we weren't really successful in finding applicants for, like PR was one that didn't have many applicants. So think about that and like what you need. But for the most part, we had a really high response rate. We had hundreds of applications. I think we had like 300, 400 applications. And we probably interviewed around 100 people and then narrowed that down to 20. So we'll go through all of that today. The first step you have to do in this process is find them. The best place that we have found for this is AngelList. If you're not on AngelList, you should definitely get on it. The website is angel.co. And it's really a source for finding originally investors and things like that, but now it's really a big recruiting platform. And if you know about AngelList, you're probably ahead of the curve for most interns, and therefore you're self-selecting into a pretty high quality talent pool. So if you're not familiar with AngelList, I'll walk through kind of the process there. First, you have to create a AngelList profile for your company. This is like the overview, your culture, founders, team, etc. And think about this as like a marketing page. If an intern comes across your page, they want to get excited about what they're working on. When we talked about Lavender originally, when we were really unsure what it was going to evolve into, we described it as an AI-driven email gamification product, which is kind of buzzwordy, but these are sort of the things that early interns are looking for, that they're trying to get more experience in these things for their career. We posted a number of different roles, everything from engineers to marketing to sales, UI, UX. The ones that we had excellent responses for were the marketing, the business analyst. We had many, many applications for that, engineering, AI, and UI, UX. And some of these interns now have full-time roles at our company. They started off as interns and then we hired them. So it was really a good applicant pool across all of these things, with the exception, I think, of a sales intern and a PR intern. There weren't many applications for that, but your results may vary. But for product and in engineering, excellent interns. And also for the business intern, I mean, we had people applying that were grad students at Columbia Business. We had people that were finishing their master's programs. Like our intern pool was everything from people in their sophomore year studying linguistics up to AI engineers that had already completed their master's program. One of them in particular she had finished her master's program, was a full-time AI engineer in Texas, was laid off due to COVID, and she was from China. So she had to find another role really, really quickly, or she was gonna have to leave. And somehow we got connected, and she built some really cool technology for us, and now is an AI engineer at Apple. So it's across the board, but really, really high quality across all these different roles. When you post the job ad, it looks something like this. We tried to give some kind of an aspirational view of the product. Like, you're working closely with the founders. If you were working on the AI stuff, you're going to work with one of our PhD advisors. So think about what's unique to your business and what a college student or a grad student would be interested in. And they're trying to get experience. So working closely with the founding team, or people building technology, or being told they're going to make meaningful contributions to the business. Highlight these things in the job ad, because there's a certain type of person that's looking for that sort of things. And if you're just kind of a generic ad that says, come build technology with us, it's going to be less exciting than if you're saying you're going to be working like closely with these people, because that's what they're trying to learn from. So we made sure to always highlight this in our jobs. And from there, you start getting in applications. Again, different roles will have different amounts of people apply. I think I want to also asterisk this with, we were doing this in the heat of COVID. So a lot of people had lost their internships, lost their job offers. So there was a really dense market of people that needed internships really quickly. It's probably leveled out some now, so you might not get as many responses, but I have shared this framework with several friends that are doing startups. They've replicated this even post peak COVID and had success replicating this exact process. So once you've posted the job ads, you have gotten some responses. One thing you can do on AngelList, if I can mention this, you can either pass or get intro. If you click get intro, AngelList will automatically connect you through email. And typically the intern will email you to set up a time. You can also include a note. So sometimes I had additional questions I wanted to ask them, like, why are you applying? Maybe your background doesn't fit the role. If you want to ask clarifying questions, you can do that here as well. Once those are set up, schedule the interviews. We had them install our software. This had a couple objectives to it. It was A, it gave them context so they knew what they were talking about, but B, it's definitely a filter, adding a step for someone to take before their interview. A lot of them won't do it, and it filters out people that aren't as serious. And also because we were like kind of pre-launch, it was an early growth hack for us. We were like under 100 users at the time, got our first like 100 users doing this, and some of them like shared it with their friends, family, other students, et cetera. And we got a little bit of early traction because of doing that. One of the things in the interviews that worked really well for us was not going to Google and typing in interview questions or things like that. We didn't ask any systematized interview questions. They were all just a dialogue and a conversation. And some of these interviews lasted 10 minutes and we knew right away they weren't a fit. Other ones lasted 2 hours. One that really stands out to me lasted 2 hours on a Saturday morning at like 8 a.m. And at first, I didn't think the intern was going to be a good fit. We had already filled the role that she was applying for. But after we just dug deeper and understood what was really important to her, we actually customized an entirely custom internship for her. And it was really, really interesting. We found out she had a passion in natural language processing to figure out consumer sentiment. So we had her do competitive analysis where she built models that analyze millions of consumer reviews on everyone that was in our competitive landscape and found out what people liked about our competitors, what they didn't like, what they wish they had, et cetera. So that was not something we were thinking about. And just in the interview process, we uncovered that that was really interesting to her. And that was her entire summer project. What was really interesting was that we just asked people, like, what are you interested in? Tell us your story. And typically, if you ask someone to tell you their story, they're going to hit all the high points of their background that they think are most interesting in what they like, what they don't like, and where their strong suits are. So that was really the core part of the interview. And once they've told that story, then the rest of it kind of falls. Other questions kind of fall into place based on the situation. A common interview question I would always ask is, what are your high energy versus low energy tasks? And what I mean by this is what types of things require a high energy output for you to do? Meaning, these are the kind of things that you typically want to procrastinate on. They are not as exciting to you. They're harder for you. They're more challenging for you compared to what are your low energy tasks. And people that they can tell you they're low energy tasks. These are things I can do really, really quickly. I enjoy doing them. They don't require a lot of effort on my part. Those are the things that they would prioritize on. And we structured our team around things that were the mostly low energy tasks for the interns because they enjoyed doing them. They could do it efficiently. They could do it effectively, while also peppering in some things that were going to be high energy tasks so they could still evolve, they can still learn. But understanding what was high energy and low energy for each of the interns was really effective in building an effective applicant class or intern class, because we weren't just trying to fit a square peg into a round hole. We tried to customize the hole around what was good for them and built the entire program around their core competencies. And I think that was something that was really effective for our team. One of the things that we did, because we had so many tasks, we have 3 founders, myself, Will, and Casey. So every day after the interviews, we would go through and we would discuss everyone that we interviewed that day, and we'd start to filter out people that we thought were not going to move on to like the next day of interviews. So we had a spreadsheet in Google Drive that we kept, and after every interview, we would update it with their name, their role, their location. We also were hiring for 1 full-time position. So if they were full-time or intern, and then each of the founders would rank the intern on a scale of 1 to 10. And when we did this, we blacked out the cell in the spreadsheet so the other founders couldn't see the number or the comments the people were putting in. And then after everyone was finished, we changed the background back to transparent, and we discussed, okay, you've ranked them a 5, you've ranked them a 7. And why? What are your concerns? And from there, we'd start comparing them against everyone else we'd interviewed prior to them and saw how they stacked up against the previous competition. And that's how people would move forward. on a day-to-day basis. So after we had figured out the top interns, again, we thought we were going to hire one originally, we hired 20. So a lot of that was due to just finding out what individuals were good at. Like for the business analyst position, we originally were going to hire one business analyst, and then we ended up hiring several. We hired one to analyze competitive landscape. We had one to analyze the NLP project for competitors' customer reviews. We had one that analyzed user data in Mixpanel. We had one that did overall general analyst. So there's a bunch of things that got segmented out. We had this overall like umbrella description of a business analyst, but as we met more and more of these interns, we realized, well, this person's really interested in customer data. This one's really interested in financial analysis. This one's really interested in consumer reviews with NLP, et cetera. So we had 5 of them that were doing different tasks based on what they were interested in. And that's kind of a lot to manage because some of these things overlap. So for example, the intern that was doing the customer review NLP analysis, that's an overlapping role that combines the business function as well as some engineering functions. She needed assistance from our engineering department to build a web scraper that could go collect all these reviews for her to do analysis on. So we had to think, how are we managing them? How is this getting divided? Even though we're a small team, we wanted to be relatively efficient. So we built out an org chart and a lightweight process, and Will built some of this as well. So if you have more specific questions around org chart or processes or frameworks, put them in chat and he can answer them. But in general, we had a slide that just had each of the founders and then one of our advisors who was working closely with our team in each of the roles, so like marketing, business, finance, sales, engineering, AI, et cetera, and just had boxes that overlapped where each person falls. So if one person's doing the NLP and customer data, then her box would cross both engineering and business functions. So most of the management would be with the business function, but she might have some leaning into our CTO. So that was something that we did just to keep everyone understanding who's responsible for which interns. And I just said that. So yeah, we built a graphical chart. And then from there, after we did that, we started onboarding the interns. So I think what's important here is there are some legal aspects to onboarding interns, and there's also things that are just important so they have a good time and they feel like they're part of the team and they're not just an intern, which is key. So first, I'll go through some of like the processes for like the legal aspect, and then some about what was really helpful in getting them to feel like they're part of the team. So everyone got an offer letter, and the offer letter is important for many of them, especially if they're getting college credit. They need to have things like exact, precise start and end dates. In some cases, the address they were working, or because of COVID, if they were remote. So this is both to give them some overview, and I can send all this afterwards if people are interested. But the offer letter just gives them an overview of who they're working with, what their primary role is. In some cases, it's shared with their school if they need approval for college credit, or in some cases they needed approval from whoever the governing body was if they were an international student and they had different restrictions. And then they also needed a legal agreement. And we talked with our attorneys about this. They said just use an independent contractor agreement. So we used our independent contractor agreement and just set the term for the summer internship. I think one of the most important things here is understanding compensation. There's a couple different strategies on what you can do, and you hear a lot about unpaid internships, and there's some people have different opinions on them. I don't think they're bad personally. I had them in college, but if you want to own their IP, you have to pay them. You have to pay them something in order to legally own any of the intellectual property they make for you. So even if they are getting college credit and you've done FLSA, which is the Fair Labor Standards Act, you've signed off on that, it's okay to have unpaid internships legally under this if they've agreed to it and it's part of their school program. Some schools don't allow it, some schools do. But even in this situation, you have to pay them something in order to own their IP. The other frameworks here, you could do a stipend. So we did a mixture of all 4 of these. We had some that were just college credit. We had some that were getting a stipend for the summer, like for supplies, things like that. We had some that were getting paid for a project. They were project-based, and some that were getting paid hourly. But in all situations, again, got to underline this, if you want to own their IP, if they're building core technology, they're building any sort of technology, you need to pay them something. Even if it's just $100 or a couple $100, it's required for the contract to be valid for that. We also sent them, as the next part of, after the offer letter and the agreement was signed, we then sent them a welcome kit, kind of. We sent them a welcome email with some process things, like here's how you log into Slack. We're going to be doing all of our communication in Slack and in Google Drive. And then I sent all those invites to their email. So once they signed their offer letter, and I sent the rest of it to their trylavender.com email address. And we also sent them a summer guide right before they signed up. This was really key in getting the interns on the same page, because everyone in their interviews were looking at the business from a different perspective. Some were looking at the business from UI, UX, some were looking at it from NLP, some from finance. So they were all learning about the business and asking questions about the business from different perspectives, different angles. So we included a PDF that organized the entire business, like we do an investor deck kind of, into a single PDF that included everything in the business and welcomed them, got them excited. We had a letter from the founders that explained, like, we have a 3-month sprint over the summer to accomplish a lot of things. And it really helped them, from what we heard from their feedback, this helped them all get in the mindset that we have got a race in front of us. We've got a set deadline. We've got a lot of things that we need to accomplish. And here are all the things about the business that I need to know: the product, the market, the problem we're solving, early customer feedback, the different use cases for our product. Because at the time we were thinking we could apply our writing technology for HR, customer success, operations, marketing, and sales. And now we're doing sales, but part of it was like, here are the different applications it could be used for. Here are how are people are using it today. Here's how we think they can use it. And here is just the overall product. So everyone knows the market, the problem we're solving, why people are using it, why people love it, and who we're going after. So everyone got on the same page very quickly with this. The next step after everyone started their internship was just managing them. And I think this is key in order to manage effectively without micromanaging, and also getting them to constantly feel like they're part of the team, feel like they're building something special, and that they're also evolving as they're doing this. So the biggest thing is micromanaging. We weren't having constant oversight of the interns. Part of this was as a result of being remote first. It's harder to do that, but we really gave them a lot of, I think, flexibility to run with it. And you can feel comfortable doing this if you do the interview effectively. Like, you should be only hiring people that you are going to trust with really important things within the business. And if you don't trust them with really important things, you probably shouldn't hire them. So if you're hiring good people, then not having to micromanage is really an easy thing to do. It's easy to give up that control because you put trust in your interview process. However, we did do regular check-ins. Typically, there was check-ins every day for each of the teams, like a morning check-in for business analysts, a morning check-in for engineering. We did every other day check-ins for design and UI UX. This is a mistake I think we made that is a learning moment. I did every other day check-ins for design and UX because I knew, as having some design background, that it takes time to iterate. So we did every other day. But I think looking back, and what we do now in the business is an everyday check-in, because even if they're making very small progress on a design, like slight tweaks, it's better to cut problems in the bud, really, instead of waiting 2 days. They've been noodling on it for 2 days. And although it might take that much time to get a next iteration in a design, if you kind of stop and talk to them in the middle of it, it might answer some questions. So we figured out that 2 days was too infrequent, and we changed it to a day. But for everything else, we did 1 day. And that would be my suggestion, especially in the beginning, until you get a good framework for how people are working. We also didn't give them entire access at first, but they could earn access really quickly. An example of this was social media. So we had an intern helping with social media. She was really excellent. We gave her access to the accounts and the posts, but it was understood that she wasn't allowed to go just post on the account without our permission at first. So at first we gave her a Google Drive. She would come up with different content ideas. We would discuss them in our morning meeting or sometimes in Slack throughout the day. And then we'd say why we liked this certain post or why we didn't like a post. And throughout the day, we would iterate on them. And then over time, I'd say after about 2 weeks or so, she understood like what we wanted, what we didn't want. And by that point, we trusted her fully with our account. She was able to go and make posts on social media without our approval. And there are a couple situations where we looked at it and like we could have done this a little bit differently, and there's learning moments, but for the most part, everything she posted would have been something that we would have posted ourselves. But it didn't start that way. It takes them a little bit of time to understand what you're looking for, what's good, what's bad. So slowly give them access, but be willing to give them access and to trust them because they're adults and they're trying to prove themselves, and they're typically really good if you're hiring good interns. Again, we did daily stand-ups, but we also did weekly stand-ups. So the daily stand-ups were for different functions like design stand-up or engineering stand-up or natural language processing stand-up. And some of them were really deep, like the ones that were NLP AI. These were very scientific. We had a PhD advisor involved. They were doing really dense technology. We were building technology that was comparable to stuff IBM has built. And again, with interns, and we built stuff that exceeded what IBM has done for our use case. But these were, so some of the stand-ups really long and they were in depth, but some of them were really quick, like a half an hour, in some cases a little bit less. But we also did a weekly stand-up, which I'll go into in a little bit. But the weekly stand-ups brought everyone on the same page for the entire team. So we did a weekly team stand-up, and then also founder one-on-one. So each founder had a set of interns that they would manage, but they didn't have to interact with all of them every single day. So for the ones that weren't interacting with interns on a daily basis, we would do weekly founder one-on-ones, and we still do that today with our core team, so that they all felt like they were aligned with the founders. They could ask questions, whether it's about the business. Some just wanted to ask questions about startups. They were all really interested in startups. They're joining a startup, so giving them kind of the free ability to ask as many questions as they wanted one-on-one with the founders. People really liked that. Some of the things that we did to build community, which I thought was really important, especially in the early days, and building community, like the objective here is people are going to work a lot harder and they're going to be happier if they are buying into a cause and they feel like they're part of something. So if you just have them siloed off, it's in remote first, that can be pretty easy. Like you're miles and miles away. If you have them siloed off doing their own thing too much, they're not going to feel like they're part of something. So we did a few things to combat this. Obviously, Slack is something that allows asynchronous communication throughout the day. But we installed a Slack bot called Random Coffees. And what this does is every week, it pairs up two random people from the team for a 15 or 20-minute random conversation. What we found is that although it was officially scheduled for 15 minutes, the interns would spend an hour talking to each other, learning about each other, what they're interested in, where they've been in life. It's really an unstructured call to talk about whatever you want. And obviously, like mostly it would start off with, well, how's your internship going? Or what are you working on?
Well, I think you accidentally got muted.
Where did I cut off? Sorry. Did you hear the random coffee part?
Yeah.
Oh, weird. Okay, thank you. So yeah, we did the random coffees and the interns would talk for 15 minutes, an hour, and learn about each other. And that was constantly ranked the #1 thing that people liked, was getting to know the other interns. And sometimes they get paired with the founders as well, but typically they get paired with each other. And this was really good for encouraging cross department, if you will, communication. So having a sophomore in college who's studying linguistics talking with a third-year master student studying AI, like this is not a conversation that's typically going to happen. That's what's happening in our internship. We had an engineer who's in Nigeria, and he's talking about his life in Nigeria and with our team. So these are really good for getting people to talk, to kind of cross-pollinate throughout the organization. And right after the standard or the scheduled 15-minute random coffee, we would then go into our team stand-up. And this was really exciting as a segue from the random coffee into the team stand-up. because people could talk about what they had just learned in the random coffee. So each intern would say what they learned about the other person they were paired with, a random fact. So the entire team would learn about everyone else. And then we'd have them go through what they had worked on that week. And people were really excited about this because it was kind of a show and tell-esque environment where each intern could screen share. They'd say, we were building this week. Here are the latest designs. Here are some results from our marketing campaigns, or here's our progress on our technology. So this was really a moment that that instilled some pride in them because they were getting real-time positive feedback from the other interns and the team. And this was really something that people looked forward to every week, was catching up with the rest of the team and showing what they've been working on. It wasn't purely business either. I mean, we were obviously talking about the business, but these were all really unstructured, other than the fact that I would typically do an introduction, just some overall, here are things that we accomplished this week, and then we go one by one and popcorn. So each person would call on someone else, we'd popcorn around the room. But the conversation was typically around the business, but sometimes it would go into just casual conversation like it would in an office. We learned that one of the interns was writing a screenplay, and he was talking about, how he was using us, each of the people in the company, as inspiration for different characters. So it was like an office environment, but it was all online. And I think it really came down to random coffees, team stand-ups, trying to build this community. And everyone, again, worked way harder than they were scheduled to. Everyone had internship hours. We had interns that were choosing to work weekends or choosing to work at night because they really wanted to build something and help us get off the ground. One thing that we have now implemented that we did not have during the internship program, but if I were to do it now, I would implement this, is Discord. So our team uses Discord. If you're not familiar with it, Discord is voice chat. It was typically used for gaming, but now it's being adopted for all sorts of situations, and it's free to use. We have turned it into a virtual office. So we've structured voice channels for the general public. If our users or customers want to come talk to us, they can come in. We have a boardroom like you would for an actual office. Here's when we have our full team meetings, like a team stand-up. We have a founders channel just for the founders to talk. And then each of the founders have an office. So if someone wants to do a one-on-one with us, they can hop into our office, and then an office for each of the different functions of the business, like engineering, design, marketing. So if there's a design meeting, everyone goes into the design channel like you would in a regular office. So I think this is something that if you're getting a program going now, or even just your existing business, if you have got multiple people, Discord's really, really helpful, because if you have a question, like if one of our engineers has a question, they can just unmute themselves and ask our CTO right away and get real-time feedback. And it's so much more seamless than typing something out in Slack. So biggest takeaway now would be applying Discord and using that in conjunction with Slack. So that's really the quick walkthrough of our process on how we hired people, found them, interviewed them. And we have, I think, 20 minutes left, so we can go into some questions. Again, if you want to try out our product, Lavender, and write better emails, use the code KettleSpace. And if you want to talk with me, here are all of my social profiles, my email, that we have built for interns. Just let me know.
Where's your Discord channel?
Oh yeah, I think, well, it's interesting about Discord. I think you have to give a public link, and it changes frequently. I can send the Discord channel, but it refreshes every like 2 weeks or something. There's like a security element.
Cool. Something to check out for sure. It's interesting. Well, you had, you said 20 interns at one time, and you guys are 3 co-founders. Did you find that management of that team difficult? I know you have all these tools, and like you have time too, right? Your time is valuable. You have to invest your time to do that. How'd that weigh on your schedule?
Yeah, it was interesting. So it was the most people that I've ever personally managed. And before that, I had managed 10 people. So it was double what I'd ever managed in like my previous life. I think I'm trying to reflect on it. At first, it was kind of like, well, how do we do this in a way that's effective? And there's a quick learning moment. But again, it all goes back to hiring really good people. And I think if you do the first step right, the rest becomes so much easier. We had a lightweight framework of a process. Here are the expectations the next 24 hours for the week. we talked a lot about weekly goals. Like, so what are you trying to accomplish over this week? And that's how people are really measured, is like, can you accomplish this in the week? But I don't think it really was too hard. Once we got into the flow of these daily meetings or weekly meetings, it became pretty simple, just because everyone we hired was a self-starter. They were really motivated and they wanted to build something.
Yeah, well, I was just going to add to that because I think one of the things that we did at the start that saved us was just like went all in on process around how we were going to manage, how we were going to do daily conversations. And from that, we were able to pick apart things that worked, things that didn't, and learn from them. Because if we had just thrown it out there and then tried to wrangle it on the fly, I think we would have had a lot of trouble. But I think the process behind it was smooth enough that it was easy to learn and adapt on the fly.
So a question coming to the chat, Will, related to the other side of managing interns. What happens when they don't work out? Did you have that experience?
I can't talk too much about firing interns. We didn't have to fire any. We did have some leave though. We had one who wanted to, in his spare time, he was working on a photography business and also was doing coding. And he decided that he lived in Montana, a beautiful area, and his photography business was starting to get more traction. So he left to do that. We had another one who was doing a master's in cognitive science at Johns Hopkins, and school just got the best of her. She didn't have enough time. So she reduced her hours and then ultimately she left. So there were a couple that we did end up losing because life got in the way of them, but we didn't have any that we had to fire. But if we did, I would go back to something my very first boss told me. And his kind of rule of thumb was hire slow, fire fast. Take your time and hire the right people and take your time hiring them, but get rid of them quickly, because you can probably see pretty early if someone's going to work out or not. And once those early warning signs start to show, just rip the Band-Aid off and let them go. All the ones that left early, we let them keep whatever, if they had a stipend or they had prepayment, not the ones that were hourly, of course, but if they were getting paid in for like a chunk, we could keep it. We weren't overly zealous about that, but overall, I think I would just go back to hire slow, fire fast. Just hire the right people to start with.
So your case here was about your 3-month summer internship. Are you running internship programs ongoing?
Yeah, so we have some in the fall. There were a couple that, like the most excellent interns we had that were building really cool technology. We brought them back in for the fall. We have a few. We're not doing as many. We're not doing like the whole 20. We don't have as much work for 20 people today because we have a process in place. We've hired some people, but yeah, we've kept a consistent internship group. We had one that came in. She was really excellent. She had interned for us at our last company. She was a student of neuroscience, and she had built content for our previous company where we were building neuroscience and psychology marketing tech. And she reached out to us in the fall and said, I decided I don't want to be a neuroscientist anymore. I want to be a graphic designer. And it was random. And we had a full-time UI UX graphic designer. So I wasn't really sure if we would have enough things for her to do. And her graphic design skills in the beginning, I think that our designer was better. So I was curious like how they would work together. But I knew she was a smart person. She worked hard and got along with our team. So I said, yes, we're happy to have you back. We'll figure something out. And as we were trying to figure out what she should do, we just trained her. I had her go take Webflow University, which is how to build websites on Webflow, had her do Google Analytics certification, Google Ads certification, Google Optimize. I had her just do the classes for all of these different tools. And when she left the internship, she not only had built us a new website, but she had also learned deeply how to do every aspect of web and graphic design really, really well, and got a job doing that with all these new skills that she had learned. So yes and no, we have some, but not as many. We're hiring one right now for video content for like Instagram Reels and TikTok and things like that.
Anyone have any other questions? You can unmute, small group. All right, excellent. Will, I appreciate you taking the time and sharing this process. There's obviously a lot there. We will make the recording available to everyone. I know I learned a few interesting pieces here, so thanks for that again. Thanks to everyone who showed up, and I want to let everyone know that we have 2 events this Thursday: Breakfast with an Investor at 9:30 and Transform Your Sales at 1 p.m. All the details are on KettleSpace.com. Thank you all, and wish you all a great day.
Bye. Thank you. If you have questions, email me.
Thanks, y'all.